Testing, testing, 1, 2, 3. Testing, testing, 1, 2, 3.
Yes, sir.
Just wanted to let you know, so there was an issue with audio at the beginning with the.
To be discussed.
I asked Mr.
Okay, welcome everybody. We're back live on our March 23rd special board meeting. Before we get too far into this, let's go ahead and do our Pledge of Allegiance. Mr. Heberly, would you mind leading us in the pledge, please?
It would be my pleasure. Everybody stand and salute, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America.
Thank you, Mr. Heberly. Very well done. All right. Report out from closed session. We have nothing to report from closed session. But we are here tonight for a special board meeting, and I appreciate all the board members for attendance. We have 5 board members in person and 2 that are on video. And we have 2 items on there, tonight's agenda. One is a report item as to the opening of school, and an action item, which of course corresponds with that. This is very, very exciting for us to be talking about this, and looking forward to all the discussion that we're going to have. So, Dr. Washer, take it away.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the board. Appreciate the opportunity to talk to you about our plans and some updates that have occurred recently. As you know, there's been some action in different arenas about this whole issue of in-person instruction and bringing students back to school. And there is some positive news out there. There's some groundbreaking efforts out there. We're excited to be able to see where this is going to go. It looks like we may be able to move things quicker than anticipated, especially since we are still in the purple tier. So I just want to mention, in case you haven't heard or members of our public haven't checked yet, that our county is still in the purple tier, and we did not earn a week's credit of red for this past week. That part is very disappointing. We see all around us counties going into the red, If you look at the state map, there's a lot of red, there's even some orange, and there's a little bit of purple, and unfortunately that is us. Our case rate did go up a little bit, and we did lose the orange criteria that we had previously, which helped us meet the red criteria. So it looks like from what we understand that the testing rate in our county has gone down. Folks aren't going to get tested as much. That kind of makes sense, because if people aren't feeling sick, people are getting vaccinated, there isn't maybe as much need to be tested, but it looks like that's what's hurting us in some cases. So if folks could still take a little time to go get tested and get our testing rate up, I understand that that would help us with our meeting the criteria for red. So if we could go to the next slide, please. I want to point out that things that have been put in this report were based on last week's information, and the attachments, especially the documentation, may not be reflective of everything new at this point, because it was based on last week's information. So there are some attachments. We do have our plans available online, and we do try to update them on a regular basis as things change. We have our plans based on Cal OSHA and the California Department of Public Health. We have protocols and procedures. There's also a document on operations, and this goes into a little bit more detail about how things would look at a school site or at the district in terms of having students back on campus. And then there are quite a few references to supporting documents, and we do try to keep those updated as much as possible. We also did a timeline, put together some information about just what has occurred over the last year and a half, and didn't put everything in there, of course, but things that were pertinent to schools, school operations. You'll see a lot of updates and revisions happening along the way, a lot of different orders, changing of orders happening, but there's been just a great deal of change over the last year and a half, and that seems to be the theme, is that things have changed and keep changing. We'll go back to the next slide, please. One new thing that you have heard about is that there is a new state grant for in-person instruction and extended learning. This replaces the original grant from the governor that did not get final approval, but that we were hopeful for. So this is a revision basically of that. There are funds for school districts that start in-person instruction following the requirements of the grant. The in-person instruction needs to start by April 1 in order to get full funding, but it doesn't end there. It isn't an all or nothing. If school districts start after that, there is some loss of funding, but not elimination of funding until the May 15th date. At that point, then, if schools haven't started, there is no funding. When in-person starts, it must continue. So it needs to be something that's ongoing for the remainder of the year. And our allocation will be approximately $20 million for this portion of the new state grant. Mr. Khan is correcting me. They're reversed. I'm sorry. If we could switch the numbers there, our allocation for that piece of it is about $9.5 million. So I apologize. If we could make that correction, that would be great. The total number is the same. It's just how it's divvied out. The funds for extended learning, this is the pot of money that's allocated to help the learning loss and mental health, those types of issues for students. That is the larger number. That's the $20 million. Thank you, Mr. Khan. What happens when I try to put the numbers in myself. Next slide. So, yeah, thank goodness, right? So this is our timeline that was in place last week. This was the direction that we gave to our employees in our community, letting folks know that on March 29th, when we return from break, which is next Monday, that elementary schools would start in-person instruction, and that would be on the hybrid model that is indicated in the MOU with Leah, and that we would also have for grades 7 through 12 special day class students and high priority group students. And our staffs are working with parents who fall into that category. And then in the red tier, the 7th through 12th grades would start along with adult education and the 7th through 12th on the hybrid model. And that would be as soon as possible, which would be the first in-person day after red tier designation. So red tier is tiers are typically identified on a Tuesday. Wednesday is an all distance learning day for us, so then it would be that Thursday. So this is where we left things before things started changing. So I just want to point out that that's where we left. So if we go to the next slide. Just to give you some information on the choices that our families are making. We are offering an optional distance learning for the remainder of the school year. Actually, we have several options in place. There is our independent study, which has always been in place. There's also the new Valley Robotics Academy, which offers distance programs as well. But then we did say to our parents that there would be an optional all distance learning for students who wanted to remain on that for the rest of this year and not go into those programs in particular. So here's where it landed maybe midweek last week. Elementary, a little over 3,000 students. Middle school, about 850, and high school, about 2,200 students choosing those options. Doesn't include some of those that are already on distance learning programs. And of course, Middle College High is following the Delta College guidelines, and they have said that they are distance learning for the remainder of the school year. So go to the next slide, please. And then we heard about a decision out of San Diego, lawsuit filed on behalf of students from 6 different school districts. And this could be some good news for us, especially for districts who are still in the purple tier. The judge did issue a temporary restraining order, and there were certain components that the judge found to be unconstitutional coming from the guidelines for schools. And they're identified there. A couple of the ones I want to talk about, which really would help us, is the distinction between elementary and secondary students. The California Department of Public Health had said that elementary schools could open in the purple, but not 7-12. That has since changed, but that's where the judge deemed that is unconstitutional, that denying some students their education as opposed to others simply because of their grade was unconstitutional. The other piece is the distancing. You may recall that the Department of Public Health had changed the 6 feet to 4 feet, which did give us some relief, but now they did change it to 3 feet. But the judge is saying that that 4 feet distance requirement between students in class prohibits schools from opening, and so that is unconstitutional. And then the idea about stable student groups, where students are staying together as a group. As you know, in secondary, that is extremely difficult as they're moving from class to class. So this decision does have statewide implications. We understand that there is going to be a hearing on April 1st, and that will give us more information about how this impacts districts throughout the state. At this point, this is a temporary restraining order, and it is not finalized. So we recommend that we begin planning and looking forward to this becoming permanent, and that we do some very quick planning in case that happens. Go to the next slide. So then there was an update, and the state's guidance for schools was updated. As I mentioned before, 4 feet was changed to 3 feet. Districts can offer in-person to any grade level unless we're at that higher or the deep purple tier. So not just elementary. But the guidance still holds on to some of the tenets that were originally there, that talks about a phase-in approach to bringing students back, certain grade levels at a time. That also includes hybrid, as opposed to everybody coming back in full. So that piece is still in the guidance. And then there is the piece about the safety plan being submitted to local county health and also the state safety team, if in the purple tier. So that piece is still in the guidance. Excuse me. Go to the next slide. Or is that it? That's it. So what I'm hoping that board will consider this evening is approving the plan, but also knowing with the understanding that things are going to change and that we do need flexibility to make adjustments based on changes, whether it be from California Public Health, local health, state decisions. But we also would like you to consider continuing with our current plans for March 29th, which is for elementary students to start in the hybrid. I know that that's frustrating for a lot of folks, but we're suggesting that we move forward with the plans that are in place now for a lot of reasons, timing being one of them, being on break and coming back straight from break. But then also that the board give us direction to move forward in taking any steps necessary to bring secondary 7 through 12 grade back as soon as possible, and to take any steps necessary to have all students and all grade levels full in person as soon as possible. Things are changing quickly, and a lot of this is really good news, but we also need to make sure that we're cautious and that we do things correctly and in the right order and sequence, and make sure that we have the appropriate things in place. So that is why we are suggesting that we stay with our current plans for Monday, for March 29th, but that the board give us the authority and approve us taking whatever steps we need to do to get all of our students back. Number one, to get our 7 through 12 back, and number two, to get full in-person going as soon as possible. And that could be based on public health order changes, guidance changes. It could be based on legal decisions such as the San Diego decision. So we want to be as open as possible that we can so that we take advantage of every opportunity. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you, Dr. Washer. I forgot in my introductions, we are being assisted tonight by our executive assistant to the board, Ms. Michelle Armstrong, and we have our technician extraordinaire, Andrew's also with us here tonight. So thank you both of you for assisting tonight. Dr. Washer, thank you and your staff for that presentation. Comments from the board? Mr. Neely?
Thank you, Mr. Freitas. I gotta get a quicker button than that. I push that thing and it just stays red on me. All right, look.
How about with this? How about we throw the button out?
Yeah, that's it. Let's do it. Dr. Box, that was a great report. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. I'm going to start off by just saying that I join you in supporting your plan that we get our kids back in school as quickly as possible. One of the things that I have been able to do is to attend virtually, of course, the delegate assembly meetings for our district for CSBA. And some of the schools have, some of the districts have started back. And with the county's blessing, okay? And that's an important part there, with the county's blessing, because they got a waiver request back in that short period when we were red. And we were working on ours when we went back to purple. We didn't get it there just quite in time. But the point I'm trying to make is that it's not the virus itself that's keeping us out of school. It's our state and local government, and it's time to stand up. I mean, we've got to get our kids back in school. They're allowing other districts around us to do it. It's time for us to do it. So I have a couple of questions. First, one more point. I want to make it full time too, that we come back. I know we can't do it right away, but that should be a goal that should happen very quickly. Dr. Watford, would you talk a little bit about what you see as this phased-in approach? I mean, is it like over months? Is it over a week? What's your interpretation of what a phased-in approach would be? With time periods, please.
Thank you, Mr. Neely, members of the board. Not knowing any roadblocks, regulations, laws, not considering those things that are unknown at this point, I see it moving fairly quickly. Bringing elementary back on Monday in the hybrid mode, I see maybe a couple weeks potentially before we can bring them back, change that to full-time and bring our secondary back. So I don't see months. I certainly see maybe a couple weeks. At least that's what I'm anticipating at this point.
Okay.
So Dr. Washer, what you're saying is the goal is to have all of our students back on our campus before the end of this school year, and hopefully much sooner than that.
That is absolutely the goal. Of course, I can't predict any unknowns or what may happen along the way, but that would certainly be the goal. I mean, we're getting close to the end of the year now. I mean, we're getting into April. Time's running out.
And then what about, I'm not happy about this student group thing either. That works great for elementary classes, not so much for secondary. So if you can get some definition on that, that was struck down by the San Diego opinion, right?
That is part of the San Diego opinion, correct. And so hopefully that will stick because would be very difficult unless it were some sort of modified block schedule where students are going to limited number of classes, but they're still not staying with the same group of students. They're still mixing with different students depending on their class. So secondary is different. It doesn't work out that way.
Right. Okay. We do have one group of students that I'd like to see get back right away, and that's our special ed, and they should be back full time immediately. So can you check into that to see what we can do about getting that to happen?
They are coming back, if I can say, they are coming back on March 29th, the special day class students. The students at the high school who need to take their general ed classes for graduation, there will be accommodation for their time on campus as well. And they are the in-person concurrent, not the partial in-person. So they will be there 4 days a week, the special day class students.
Okay. And I'm just about done here, but let's talk dollars for just a second. On the slide, you had a $20 million grant that we would get. And then down below that, there was a $9.4 million for extended learning. Is that 9.4 part of the 20, or are they separate items?
They are separate items, but please switch the numbers. I put them in the wrong spot. The first one should be 9.4. The second one, extended learning, is 20 million.
Okay. I would really like to encourage you and your staff to come up with a plan that helps some of our kids who have suffered the most on this, and that's our lower income kids who haven't had as much time as they need. So what can we do for them during the summer before the next school year begins? What kind of plan can we come up with? So if you could check that out, I'd appreciate it. And one more encouragement for you and your staff is let's make that phase-in time as short as possible. And that's all I've got. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. President.
Very good, Mr. Neely. Dr. Washer, following up on Mr. Neely, that phase-in time, what do you see that being used for?
Mr. Freitas, members of the board, I think that it's important for us to get started. And so I don't want to suggest delaying something for a different purpose. We need to get kids in school on Monday, get things started. We need to help our younger students learn new procedures and practices, because even if they're coming, it doesn't matter hybrid or full-time, there will be things that are different. There will be things that, whether it's hand washing or lining up, where they go for recess and lunch, all those things are going to be different. And I think that it's important to give time for them to be able to get used to that. And I think that starting with our elementary Monday, even on the hybrid, gives them that opportunity to do that. And then it sets the stage for moving into a fuller day. a regular day and bringing our secondary on board.
Very good. Thank you, Dr. Washer. Other comments from the board? Mr. Nava?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Freitas. Dr. Washer, thank you for your report. Outstanding. And you have some suggestions that you made. The suggestions are outstanding. We will start on March 29th. Now, to move forward with the necessary steps to implement the 7 through 12, you must have some type of plan that you are going to work on in order for it to get approved. It's a safety plan, isn't it? And that safety plan, like I said, without delay, and you were very enthusiastic about starting that tomorrow, as a matter of fact, to get all these kids back in person, full time. I know that talked to Dr. Khan, Leonard Khan, in regards to the 3-foot spacing. Outstanding. All high schools and elementary schools, all those rooms would have enough square footage to allow the complete 30-to-1 or 24-to-1 students in that classroom. So again, that's outstanding. The grouping itself, like I said, I taught high school, and you got to change classes, and those are imperative that they do that. They can't stay in that classroom, and I don't recommend the teachers move. I recommend the students move. So again, let's get it done as soon as possible, and hopefully sooner than later. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Nava. Ms. Porter?
Dr. Washer, I'd like to touch on that phased-in approach. Is it possible, and this is just me thinking through kind of what you said, on the K through 6, that we, on the 29th, are starting off hybrid minimum day. Are you looking at going from a minimum day, then eventually to a hybrid full day, and then eventually back in school normal as we were pre-COVID-19?
Thank you, Mr. Porter, for asking for clarification. To be honest with you, I don't know that there would be a need to stay hybrid and go full day. That certainly is an option that we can look at in terms of a phase-in model. That does make some sense. I don't know that it's necessary. I think that going from our shortened day hybrid to a full day, 5 days a week, is also reasonable.
So then you'd be looking at, we're gonna start off in our hybrid minimum day as we agreed to months ago, and then after that, the phased-in approach would be full day for regular school.
At this point, I don't see. At this point, I see that is a strong possibility. I'm not going to say that there are other options or models out there that we could do, but I don't know that we would have to have another step in there.
And my last question, and I'll try to keep this short, is I do know of some districts that jumped on the San Diego decision and started school the next day in person. Is that something you envision for this district?
I do not suggest doing that on Monday.
I didn't say Monday. I said if it's upheld, so forth and so on.
Oh, I'm sorry, misunderstood. If it is upheld, then I would suggest that we do it as soon as possible. I don't know if that means the next day, or you give families and staff 2 days to kind of prep, that kind of thing. But certainly wouldn't be a long lag time. I don't see like a week.
Right. Well, and I understand we're in a fluid situation and we have to be very nimble, but you are prepared for quickly with due process, allowing parents to reestablish what they need to do for daycare and so forth, make that change with proper protocol in place. So it wouldn't be something, because I read about a couple districts where they have basically told everybody we are going the next day full. I hope that that's not something we would do.
I don't anticipate that, Mr. Porter. I appreciate that. We do understand that there are many moving pieces, not only for us, but for families.
Okay, thank you. And then my last question is for Mr. Khan, and then I'll stop talking. Mr. Khan, I know that the stimulus package was just passed. I do know that a lot of it is going to the states and then going to the school boards. I read, as I told you earlier, I think it was EdSource or something like that, that we're receiving an incredible amount of money. Have you or your staff looked at how you're going to deal with this? I would call it a tsunami of money coming in. What we're going to be doing with it?
Well, at this point, initial indications are you're speaking of the federal.
I'm speaking to the federal stimulus package, right?
Yeah, initial estimates. I think you classified it correctly using the term tsunami. It could be double our ESSER 2 funding, which is 31 million. It will require a lot of planning. It will require a lot of a multi-year sort of approach to it. If Dr. Washer covered what's now being known in the financial side of the school business as ELO, the expanded learning opportunity, the board will have to approve a June 1st budget for that money. And in it is there are a lot of good ideas in it clearly many of the things this board has discussed over these last 12 months, the mental health pieces and the interventions.
So this is something we're going to be looking at down the road then. It won't have an immediate impact.
We don't have the money yet, but
right.
It's coming. So
right.
Just like the reopening, it'll probably be here before any of us can handicap its delivery dates.
Thank you for your time, Mr. Khan.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Porter. Other comments from the board? Vice President McFarland.
Thank you to both of you for your reports. I want to make sure that you understand that I am all for the phase-in sooner rather than later. I don't want the 24-hour turnaround, but I am in complete agreement that the quicker we can phase in, the better it is for our students and our families and our staff. I also have a quick question for Mr. Khan. When we look at those 9.4 million and that 20 million, do we have plans for those yet, or will we be seeing that at a later date? Because I know we're getting different amounts of money coming in, and they're all starting to blur because it's, as I like to say, mountains of money, and I want to make sure that the categories that they're being spent in, is there other things that we can use them for other than just the categories?
With the ELO or the expanded learning opportunity, the board will have to approve a budget on that before June 1st. It's starting to look like that will be true supplemental money. In other words, in order to avail itself of the money, the board would have to add service to spend that money. And that's the ELO money. That's the close to 20 million. The 9.4 in-person amount earlier today, I thought it would be treated somewhat like the ELO. I believe I flipped. I think there's going to be a lot more flexibility on that money, but as both these state pots are, the guidance is still in draft form.
Yeah.
I can't speak definitively at this point, but I do believe the 9.4 will be more flexible than the 20 million.
Even though it's one-time money, could it be used for something ongoing? Since it's directly going to impact students, is there any way that could be used to bump up staff in those areas that students are needed? Or is that not something that we can even talk about, or is it too early to discuss that?
Well, as I'll repeat my refrain. I mean, it's as a business person advising the superintendent directly, maybe the board indirectly, it really isn't our position or our function to advise the board to structurally imbalance its balance sheet. As we've talked about in SBAC, allowing your ongoing expenditures to exceed, because cutting those expenditures is very, very difficult, and oversight groups tend to prevent boards from doing that. in essence, we have very low staffing ratios, and we do spend a good deal of money in the 4,000 codes. If that were to be restructured, then it would create surplus opportunities on an ongoing basis.
And I'm assuming we're going to discuss that quite heavily in our SBAC meeting.
It's our favorite topic.
I just want to make sure. I think those are all my questions. I'm anxious to see where you go. I also want, Dr. Washer, if you can share with maybe everyone that's listening and us again, that when you say we're going to get busy on these things and we're going to have a plan in place, I think we understand the plans that have been brought forward and the changing scenery. But I think that our parents, our constituents, our teachers, our families, everyone that is outside of this room doesn't understand how many plans and what you have had on the table and what is sitting on the shelf, as I like to say. So when we say you're going to basically get after it, you're not recreating the wheel, you're adjusting the wheel that has been moving since last March. So can you give a little explanation on that? Because I know when you say that, I hear it as, wow, they're just now going to look at it. And I think that's not the intended purpose of how it's coming across.
Thank you, Ms. McFarland. I appreciate that. Yes, our plans have been in place. We have approved plans by local public health and also state safety team. But things are changing, and implementation is changing based on new guidance, possibly legal decisions out of San Diego, maybe others as well. And because of that, we need to make sure that we don't miss a beat, and that if something is required for us to submit, that we do that. So that's what I mean by that, is updating, revising, adjusting based on whatever is required of us to do from what we have already done. So I appreciate the acknowledgement that we do have plans in place. We do have approved plans in place, but things have changed, and we need to make sure that we follow whatever the requirements are for those changes.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Well, and just to follow up on that, Dr. Washer, one of the changes actually came Saturday afternoon when the state then changed the guidelines from the guidelines that the state had enacted just a few weeks earlier. So that is how fast this district is moving and how fast this district is reacting. So thank you, Vice President McFarland. Mr. Heberly?
Thank you, Mr. Freitas. I just wanted to, wow, there's no sense in me restating so many things that were stated. I just did want to say, I think that we're headed in a much better direction. It's a direction of movement and change to the betterment of what it's going to mean to our children, our students. So I look at that as very positive. And I agree that, plans are in place. We have to adjust because their rules and guidelines change all the time. And sometimes they're contradicting themselves. Gee, go figure. But I think it's important, and it has been brought up before, that we want to make sure that we can quickly respond to those changes. And I mean, they're weekly, daily. And then what happens is they come out with, this is what we're going to do. And then you kind of have to look at it. Well, wait a minute. Operationally, we have a couple of questions. Oh, well, the person who made the decision hadn't thought of that. So there is a kind of a back and forth information. So seeing as how there are changes, seeing as how we need to quickly respond to those changes. A key component to this is communication. What kind of a communication plan do we have so that when things change, we can get this out to our employees and our parents and other stakeholders, so that it's not a surprise, and we can, we'll tell you as soon as we know. How long after we know that there's a change that we can communicate this to all the stakeholders?
Thank you, Mr. Heberly. Appreciate the question. Yes, communication is very important. We have always asked parents to make sure that their information is updated with the school on a regular basis, phone numbers, emails, any of that type of thing, so addresses, so that we have correct information. We do everything that we can in terms of social media. We have the Blackboard phone calls, which is a little old school, but it does reach families who are not on the social media. School sites do a good job of communicating with their families. When we put something out, they follow up with their own procedures on communicating. And absolutely on our website, public meetings. So every venue that's available to us, we have found that mailers are not the most efficient or effective. So we have not been utilizing that a lot. It takes a great deal of time, and from the time that we start something to the time it gets to the home, something has changed 5 times. So that piece is not something that we have found to be extremely effective, but we do try to use other venues as much as we can.
Thank you. So to drill down a little bit more, a lot of that, it sounds like from what you just said, the communication to the parents. And here's an example. Let's say my child is a 3rd grader, and we're going to start on the 29th with a hybrid. Who and how do we tell this student you're a Monday, Thursday, and you student, you're a Tuesday, Friday? Who is responsible for that communication to the parent?
The school sites have done that.
Okay, so great. And I think that the closer that communication is to our constituents and our customers, let's say, I think the better off it is, because they really do have a handle as to the numbers and all that. Yeah, because the changes are crazy. Let's say you check all your sources Friday night and you go to bed, and then all of a sudden the state comes up with really a pretty major change on Saturday. And then somebody asks you a question Saturday afternoon, and you're going, oh, I didn't hear that because I haven't checked my email yet today. I mean, it is that fast. And as long as it's changing in the right direction, I'm happy. So thank you for that. The communication, again, is very important to me. Thank you so much.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Abberley. Gary, I think you're last.
Okay. Up there. Okay. Yeah. Well, thank you, Dr. Washer. I'm in agreement with virtually everybody who's talked in that I'm in favor of getting our kids back in as soon as possible and full time as soon as possible. I don't think that the hybrid is a particularly doable program. So let's just go back full time as soon as we can. Distance learning, I know that's going to be an issue for some of our parents. Some parents are going to want to continue to be on distance learning. I think that's okay, but I think I've talked to Mr. Khan about this once upon a time, about making sure that we have cameras in the classroom that will live stream the teacher. So the distance learning piece could easily be done, I believe, simultaneously with a live classroom. So that's something that, I mean, there's a lot of moving parts. That's something else that we can look at. I know I do have one other question that's kind of off topic, but I did get a question from a parent asking about if students that were traveling out of state, if they had to be quarantined for 10 days when they come back. Is there anything to that, Dr. Washer, that you know of?
Mr. Knackstedt, members of the board, there is a state public health recommendation for travel out of state. There is no requirement. The recommendation is quarantine. Lodi Unified School District has not put out a requirement for students or staff to quarantine from school or work for 10 days because of out-of-state travel.
Yeah, I didn't know if that was a mandatory thing or not. Okay, thank you. Let's get this done as soon as we can, folks. Let's get our kids back.
Thank you, Mr. Knackstedt. And I don't know if anyone has brought this up yet, but Dr. Washer, the district is going to provide flexibility for individuals that want to go from distance learning to an all-in learning environment where that to be made available. Is that correct?
Mr. Freitas, members of the board, we are trying to accommodate families as much as we can. It is a little easier in the elementary world. Secondary, because of scheduling, there may have to be adjustments in the schedule, but they will make accommodations. But it may not be exactly the child's same schedule, and we have to acknowledge that.
Very good. And we recognize all we're putting our parents through and our kids, and we want to make sure that they have the best educational experience possible. Very good. Any other comments from the board? Yes, Mr. Connect said.
I'm going to bring this up one more time just to get people thinking. I think that one possible solution, not tomorrow, would be to consider bringing back the old year-round education or year-round school, where we had 3 tracks, A, B, and C. 2 tracks were on campus at any one time, and a third was off. I have a feeling that if it's not COVID, it's going to be something else, where we're going to want to have a smaller group of people on our campus. And I think it's something that probably our staff should probably at least consider and maybe laugh about. I don't know, but something that would solve a lot of problems if we only had 2/3 of our students to worry about at any given time. It worked in the past.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Connexton. All right. Ms. Armstrong, do we have any members from the public that wish to address us tonight?
Yes, we have 13.
Very good. Who wants to go first?
And first up, we have Becky Harper.
Hi, Becky. For tonight's meeting, we are going to have the 3-minute rule. So, welcome to our meeting.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Washer and members of the board, for letting me speak tonight. I'm a parent of 2 Lodi Unified students, a 3rd grader and a 7th grader. Neither of my children have learned inside a classroom for over a year. A year missed of not engaging with their wonderful teachers in person. A year missed of interactions with peers and learning to work collaboratively. A year of loneliness, boredom, mediocre learning engagement. I could go on and on. I'm here tonight to advocate for my children and every other child in Lodi Unified to have in-person instruction 5 days a week. Thank you for your earlier comments in favor to get the classrooms reopened quickly. I would love to see the phase-in approach short and sweet. Get it over with and open up completely. You all state that you want kids back in class. Well, do it. Make it happen. History will not look back favorably on this time for the way our children have been treated and how their educational rights were stomped on. Get on the right side of history and fully open the doors of Lodi Unified now. Thank you.
Very nice. Thank you, Becky. Who's next, Ms. Armstrong?
Next, we have Michelle Orgon.
Hi, Michelle. How are you?
Good evening, President Freitas, members of the board, Dr. Washer. I'm well, thank you. I have a couple of questions. I know we only went through the updated in-person instructional report and not the other 2 documents. So I have a couple of questions. The first thing that I heard for clarification, Dr. Washer mentioned a full return. And then I just heard something about it sounded like no distant learners, but we had assured families at the beginning of the year, if they wanted distant learning, that they could sign up for it. Am I mistaken in what I heard? Are those families that sign up for distant learning still going to be able to do distant learning?
Dr. Washer?
Mr. Freitas, members of the board, Ms. Orgon, that is not correct. There will continue to be the distance learning option. one of the slides presented showed that we have about 6,500 students signed up for that. That will continue for the remainder of this school year.
Okay, that's what I saw in the report, but I heard something different about the full return. It didn't make sense. Thank you for clarifying. I know on one of the other documents having to do with the safety, pandemic safety plan and rolling it out, the switching to the week before we went on break, we found lots of teachers with going to their classrooms to set it up, but did not have the lists of students as to who would be in which group. We did not have complete site plans. There were questions over schedules and busing and transportation that weren't prepared or ready. And in looking at the pandemic safety plan, some of the documents, well, the pandemic plan says it was updated February 18th. Some of the documents and attachments have been updated in March, but the exposure protocols and the updated version with those having to do with vaccines are not in this document. Is there a reason why we're not attaching the most recent appendix documents that we have on there to our plan going forward?
President Freitas?
Yes, Mr. Khan.
Hi, Michelle. Or can you give me an example of what recent?
The exposure protocols. I know we have a new one that includes if somebody is vaccinated, and those protocols for if they have to quarantine or not because they've been vaccinated. But that is not the documents that are attached to the safety plan. So I wondered why we weren't attaching the most recent to this.
Our pandemic plans and our websites have all of those items.
Okay, when I look at the,
are you referring to the comparison between our plan and the Cal OSHA?
No, as we
model?
talked earlier, as we talked earlier at not being able to look at those documents side by side because the links don't work. On the exposure protocols, for example, item 6 on the pandemic plan has left off the most recent updates on exposure. So I'm wondering why we did not change these items within our plan to the most updated, because it's really hard to compare the ones that the safety committee has looked at, the ones that we have recently gone over, and then they're not in the document itself. So if you're looking at page 13, 14 on the exposure protocols, it doesn't have the most current one that we have on our website for exposure protocols.
Well, the website is the most current. That's the easiest way to communicate a change. So I'll have to check the document. I'm not sure why you're seeing something different than what is most current.
Okay. And will we be updating the pandemic plan to include on the prevention, the vaccine and the testing that's been discussed at safety meetings?
If you look at the pandemic plan currently on the website and the individual exposure protocol document at the very bottom of the page, it was updated, I believe, on Friday to incorporate not only vaccinations but persons with previous COVID infections as well.
Okay, I'm all right. I printed this out today from our website, so I'm confused as to, I guess, why I'm looking at something that it has or has not been. As teachers found themselves the week before, there were some questions with going forward. You know, from day one, our priority has been the return of students and staff safely to campuses. And we do recognize that the state and the legislature and the district has put forth money to mitigate some of these safety concerns and issues that we have. However, some of them don't seem to match up with what we've talked about. And, you know, as we look at going full right away, we still have teachers that are looking at classes that are not completely made up. And so we do want to make sure that everything is ready. In contacting the SELPA director, there was a meeting the week before. Well, the week teachers took half a day to set up their classrooms, but all the SDC teachers were also asked to attend a voluntary meeting at the same time they're setting up their classrooms. And I have special ed teachers that don't know what was discussed at that meeting to best address their students. So that I think we still have some missing pieces to get started, and why you have some teachers frustrated. I appreciate the discussion about communication and rolling it out. As we know, we do have some parents that, you know, do not have reliable phone service for the whole month as they work on minutes. So yes, we do know that there has to be some other forms of communication, but also communication on sites is not as transparent. So I would hope that we could work on that. And as I look at this document and what we're going to be moving towards approving, I'm concerned that it's not complete or updated. Will we be looking at going through and updating it and then representing it, say the pandemic plan?
Yeah, actually, I see what you're saying now, Michelle. I'm not sure what happened. This page was updated on the 19th along with the actual exposure document. The only thing I can think is this is not a PDF like our exposure document. It's an actual Google sheet. So I'm sorry, I don't know what happened to it, but we'll get it updated.
Okay, and maybe we can talk about several other places that it doesn't seem to match the other documents. And as we look at COVID response forms, we would continue to ask that there be a timeline and a specific person that's following up when someone is tested positive and employees have been exposed, for those reports to get updated as soon as possible, and employees letting us know. Because as you know, we know that we had exposure of several employees. Just today, after several phone calls and emails, did we get word that they were negative. And we would hope that that would be updated quickly on our website so that everyone would know it's not positive and they're not worried about that. I think that's all the questions I have on this document. Thank you.
Very good, Michelle. Thank you. All right. Ms. Armstrong, who's next?
Next, we have Tom Moshe.
Evening, Tom.
Guys, can you hear me okay? Can you guys hear me okay?
Loud and clear.
Okay. Well, thank you, board members, Dr. Washer. I just wanted to be put into record that the 3-minute time limit for Union President Oregon had gone well over her 3 minutes. So I expect the rest of the public to be able to say what they need to say without the 3-minute time limit. Also, before I give you my prepared comment, I want to express the opposition of our parent group of not going back with middle school on the 29th. And this is why. Before spring break, all teachers had 4 half days in anticipation of K through 6 and secondary going back on the 29th, because we all anticipated that we were going to be in the red tier. So per SB 86, there would be no reason that middle school cannot go back on the 29th. The phased in approach, I have not had time to digest that as well. But again, I would say that it would need to be swift in anticipation of the TRO from San Diego becoming a permanent injunction on April 1st, considering the state has dropped their appeal. So I will go into my statement that was pre-prepared. California is dead last when it comes to in-person learning, and our social contract with educators has been broken. Teachers were vaccinated against COVID-19 ahead of those in their 50s, 60s, and with underlying health conditions. Government provided school with a whopping $33 billion, or an extra 40% of this year's budget, $6.6 billion coming directly from California. COVID-19 cases are at exceptional lows. The CDC and the CDPH state with universal masking, students can safely be in the classroom 3 feet apart. This updated guidance, coupled with low case rates, allows every school in California to reopen. Despite these actions, the board, as well as school boards across the state, have voted for plans that give kids less in-person instruction in a week than they normally get in a single day. In some cases, schools refuse to reopen at all. Therefore, we call on the board to open all K through 12 schools for full-time in-person education with consideration to the North County San Diego TRO and eventual permanent injunction, considering the state allows schools to open fully where cases are less than 25 cases per 100,000 residents, and San Joaquin County is significantly below that threshold. And what do we mean by full-time? Full-time is defined as at least 180 daily minutes for kindergarten, 230 daily minutes for grades 1 to 3, 240 daily minutes for grades 4 through 12, or otherwise outlined in section 43501 of SB 98. We also know that if schools do not reopen and choose to offer the maximum amount of in-person schooling possible to all students, they will not be in compliance with SB 86. Furthermore, with the delay in school openings in Lodi Unified, the county, district, and union are putting students and parents over barrels in relation to next school year. Many students and parents want to return to their existing schools, but not with a failed distance learning or a fake hybrid model, and certainly not with draconian models that force students into plastic jail cells with desk shields. This delay has forced parents to seek alternative schooling and put down deposits at private schools that are offering in-person instruction today. This is in essence a non-refundable insurance policy that has been forced upon us because of lack of leadership at all levels, district, county, and state. I don't see any of the SB 98 funds helping parents and students in this regard. The CDC and CPDH have already adopted the new guidelines for 3-foot distancing, and when doing the math, allows most LUSD schools to accommodate all students. The CDC also says that desk shields provide zero protection. Why can't California and Lodi Unified in particular get it together and open schools as 49 other states have successfully opened schools? In fact, the state of Utah will no longer require masking in schools in 11 days. If Utah can do that safely, we certainly can open schools for every student with masking guidelines. Why can't fall 5-day full-time instruction work? Here are some of the excuses I hear. The kids can't eat lunch on campus. Why? Other districts have implemented more frequent snacks and grab-and-go lunches at the end of the day. Teachers need a 30-minute non-interrupted break. The above solution solves that problem. The kids can't play on the playground, unsubstantiated by every health organization. We can't hire enough janitorial staff to clean, then increase the pay rates to attract more applicants, as money is not an issue anymore, as many of you have mentioned. With all that being said, I pose the question, why is Lodi Unified seemingly working so hard to keep kids out of the classroom since the science, updated guidelines, TRO, and eventual injunction all say we can go back safely? It's not an MOU issue anymore, as that is a non-binding document that is nothing more than a handshake agreement. In fact, aspects of the MOU totally contradict the North County TRO and violates the Constitution of California, in particular the Equal Protection Act. It's not an IRPA issue anymore, as that applies to conditions of employment. Our group, Lodi Unified Parents for Open Schools, asked for a meeting with stakeholders 12 days ago. And although the request was not denied, it was not granted either. This meeting would have been very beneficial before this special board meeting occurred. I also want to clarify that although the district does need to submit a safety plan to the county and state, this only needs to be done 5 days before reopening, and approval of this plan is not a condition of reopening. It just needs to be submitted. Lodi Unified Parents for Open Schools have done our homework, and we know what the TRO and eventual injunction mean for getting kids back in school this year. There's no more room for excuses. There's only room for solutions. And we're willing to take this struggle as far as necessary to get our kids back in the classroom, as they should have been when we were in the red tier in October. As Spike Lee would say, do the right thing and get every single student back in the classroom. Thank you.
Very nice. Thank you, Tom. Next, Ms. Armstrong.
Next, we have Kyle Harvey.
Hi, Kyle. How are you tonight?
Can you hear me okay?
Loud and clear.
Okay, very good. Well, a couple of things. I wanted to speak on behalf of the classified employees about this agenda item, but I want to thank you all in person, as much as Zoom is in person, for the direction to institute an employee assistance plan for all of the staff in the district. We really appreciate this, considering the impacts and effects that the pandemic has had on our staff families and individuals as they have struggled along with the pandemic, with the parents and the board and everyone else. So thank you very much for that. I wanted to speak a little bit about the uses of the funds in the grants here that we're talking about tonight, which is pretty exciting. I could hear the frustration in our last speaker about, his children and our students not having the instruction that they needed and well deserved this year. And these funds do provide a lot of money to help them catch up. And CSEA employees want to be part of that. We want to provide services, extra services above what we would normally do, to provide one-on-one tutoring, small group classes, help with more with the teachers and their instruction plans. In fact, 10% of these funds are dedicated to increase hiring of paraprofessionals. And though you may have trouble hiring paraprofessionals right now, we can certainly increase hours. Most of our paras work 6 hours per day, as you know. And we're ready to help with that mission to increase the learning opportunities as much as possible for all of the students, including our own students. Our students are impacted by this as well, our family students. And one of the things that I want to just bring to your attention is that it is a concern for us that as we bring back these hybrid models and our employees are brought back from doing the distance learning classes, that they have opportunities for somewhere to place their children while they're coming back to work on campus full time. And what I'm talking about is we already have the Title I bridge programs out there. I'm not sure how that's going to fit into your reopening next week, but we have been hearing concerns from our unit members about what they're going to do with their children during this hybrid time while they're trying to transition back into getting their kids childcare on their own. So, this is just something that we look forward to speaking and consulting with you and the parents and the other employee groups about. I think it's a good problem to have of how we increase learning opportunities for all of these students in Lodi Unified and that have lost out. And we can do this. This money can be used to extend learning minutes. It can be used to extend summer school extended learning programs. And, I know it's kind of short notice for us all to get something set up for summer. And I know the teachers have their concerns about that, but we're ready, willing, and able to work with you on providing services to the students as much as we can. So thank you very much.
Very nice. Thank you, Kyle. Ms. Armstrong, who's next?
Next, we have Belinda Yeats.
Hi, Belinda. Welcome to our meeting.
President Freitas, it looks like Belinda's self-muted.
Belinda, you know how to unmute yourself? It's in the upper right-hand corner. The red microphone.
Good evening. Can you hear me?
Loud and clear. Very nice.
Good evening, President Freitas, members of the board, and Superintendent Dr. Washer. I was supposed to jump ahead of Kyle, but I'm going to just follow on his coattails. I'm Belinda Yates, Vice President of CSEA Lodi Chapter 77. AB 86 is bringing in $29.4 million to Lodi Unified School District to assist with in-person instructions. Some of these funds are targeted to be used to increase hours to our paraeducators or hire new paraeducators for supplying supplemental instruction to our students. We look forward to collaborating with you on how to use these funds. $4.9 million of that, 10%, is to go to paraeducators. And again, we look forward to collaborating with you on how to use these funds. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Belinda. And Kyle is a very tough act to follow, if I say so myself. So, Ms. Armstrong, who do we have next?
Next, we have Denise Hall.
Hi, Denise. Welcome to our meeting.
Hello. Can you hear me?
Loud and clear.
Okay. Good evening, board members, Dr. Washer, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak tonight. I have two concerns, and on those concerns, you guys talked about how things are changing so quickly, and I would really like you to revisit the recess, about the recess and students not being able to use equipment. Schools can manage the number of kids playing at one time, and we can keep the same cohorts of kids playing together. Students can also use hand sanitizer before and after the use of equipment. Or if they use balls, jump ropes, that kind of thing, I know other schools are just sanitizing those equipment after each use. And then the parks, in this area, in this county, are opened. And then the second concern is about PE. Students are being required to do PE on Zoom, and this just doesn't seem like the safest option. I would think as long as weather permits, that students should be doing PE outside. So those are the two things I'd really like you to reconsider and to keep revisiting. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Denise. It really is hard to imagine that we are going to have to teach kids how to play together once again, right? After this year layoff. Very good. Well, thank you for those comments. Ms. Armstrong, who's next?
Next, we have Lisa Wilkins.
Hi, Lisa. Welcome to our meeting.
There we go. Can you hear me?
You bet.
Okay, thanks. So I have a couple of concerns. One is I do believe that just for logistics, we need to phase in once secondary is allowed to go in. We are going to need to phase it in just because there are logistics such as food service, transportation, all these things that need to be considered. In secondary, I will have some periods that are distance only and some periods that are in person. I can tell you right now, with a full class of in person, I cannot have, there's not enough room in my classroom to have 3 feet apart of students and have a full classroom. It's just not possible. Now, I understand that different rooms have different square footages. It might be possible for different class sizes, but I will tell you right now that it is just not going to work in my classroom. For me to have a full classroom of students and have 3 feet between them, it will not work. There's just not enough. My desks that seat 4, that are lab benches, are about 7 feet across. So that is way less than 2 feet per person in there, in that seating. So, well, there are 6 feet and a few other inches, but I'm rounding up to 7. Second thing is for elementary, I do not understand how elementary teachers are going to, they're going to have students in their classroom that are both in person and are remaining on distance learning. And at the beginning of or over last summer, teachers asked that we have teachers in elementary that were distance learning only, because the prospect of teaching online and in person together is onerous, if not almost impossible. The other concern, somebody said, just have a camera on. You have major privacy issues with that. Think about having a special ed student in your classroom who has a meltdown. Now it is broadcast for everyone to see. And believe me, for those of us who are teaching, who have been teaching distance learning, we know that it's not just our students who are watching us. We have had instances where parents are on watching with their students. We have had instances where parents record what's going on and post it to social media. So you really need to think about what you're going to do with elementary having these issues. And there are some secondary classes where you've got electives that are one-off. So say Japanese, German, other classes like that, some of the AP courses where you don't have multiple sections. So you're going to have a teacher, again, who is teaching online and in person simultaneously. If a fight breaks out in a classroom, think about the privacy and liability issues about that. Lots and lots and lots of things for you to think about for just saying that, oh yeah, we can do this. We can have this happen all the time. Teaching online and in person simultaneously is a piece of cake. I will tell you, if you've ever gone on and looked at social media, looked at teacher blogs, and even administrator blogs, they all say it is horrible. You're asking the teachers to do an awful lot. You have asked us to do a lot this year. And you're asking us to do even more. And now opening us up to liability issues as well. That is not acceptable for me as a teacher. You also need to start thinking about teachers who are going to be taking leave. There are teachers who are already applying for leave if we have to go back in person because of health issues. We don't have the subs to cover them. We don't. I'm going to be very honest. I'm going to be honest. I've had some health issues with my family this year, and I've had to take time off. And I've been fortunate enough to have teachers at my site cover the periods when I've had to go, when I've had to leave because of those issues. But there are not some sites that are all that lucky. That doesn't happen in elementary. Definitely, it can happen in secondary, where you can have somebody who's on prep walk in and take over your class. But these are all issues you need to start thinking about before we open to full-time. I want full-time. As a lab science teacher, I'm telling you, I found it's really difficult, if not impossible, to teach a lab science remotely. I get it. I get that our kids have not gotten everything they deserve this year. But again, I'm going to tell you, these are some of the issues that teachers brought up over the summer. I was part of those conversations, and I'm sorry to say that they were not considered by this board and by our administration. So again, thank you, President Freitas, board members, Dr. Washer, but please consider all of these as we move forward.
Very nice. Thank you, Lisa. Who's next, Ms. Armstrong?
Next, we have Brittany Stafford.
Hi, Brittany. Welcome to our meeting.
President Freitas, I don't see Brittany on the list.
Okay, if we find Brittany later, let's add her back in.
Will do.
Thank you, Andrew. Next,
Next
Ms. Armstrong.
Next, we have Lana Gentry.
Lana, welcome to our meeting.
Good evening.
Evening. How are you?
Good, thank you. Good evening, Mr. Freitas, members of the board, and Dr. Washer. My sons attend Bear Creek High School, and I teach at Bear Creek High School. So it gives me a little unique perspective. Please, with all the changes that are happening, and I prepared my comments, and then I'm listening to the presentations and moving all around. But anyhow, please take the time to prepare and communicate with parents and employees about any changes that are going to happen. I normally receive multiple communications as a parent, as a teacher, double communications for each child, etc., but did not receive one communication explaining that last week of the quarter, we were going to be moving to minimum days and returning in person on March 29th. I did not receive one communication. I had a teacher that I work with call me yesterday because she had never received the message that because we had changed to purple, we were not returning in person at the high school level. And we should be receiving multiple messages. And then when Mr. Heberly brought that up, I was like, yes, because at the beginning of the school year, when everything was changing, we would get messages from Chelsea. We get a text. I get phone messages from the district, phone messages from my school site, but we haven't been getting the same level of messages. And so the only thing I receive from the district now would be through the text message, but that obviously didn't go to every employee, and it certainly didn't go to every single parent. And especially since we're talking about these types of changes, we need to do overkill in communication and make sure that everyone knows what is happening. So that was my one concern. I was very happy to hear Mr. Heberly bring that up. As a parent, I am overwhelmed and worried about my sons. This is their senior year. This has been really difficult, and it's taken a toll on both of them, as well as my students in the classroom. That last week, it was just all of a sudden switch. They still had finals to take, but a shorter classes. I, as a parent, didn't know how I was going to work out transportation with one of them in ROP at Lincoln Tech, We live in Lodi, but I bring them to Bear Creek with me because Bear Creek is an awesome high school. So then I'm dealing with other transportation, which, you know, that's my own personal issue, but you know, you have to be on class this time, at home at this time, and when was the bus going to pick them up? And so I couldn't even find that information as a parent, and I'm an employee of the district and know where to look. So I just can only imagine the frustration of parents who do not know on the inside who to call and contact. One of my sons doesn't want to return to school at all. He's very concerned. He doesn't feel it's safe. With that sudden, we're going to go back in a week, there wasn't time to plan or survey high school parents about kids wanting to return to school who were on DL, or maybe kids who were supposed to return go to DL. I was hearing from other teachers at elementary schools of different elementary principals saying the parents could make switches up until that Friday, but we never got that type of information at the high school level as a parent. And I might not have heard completely, but when I was listening to Dr. Washer's presentation talking about how many high school students were going to be on DL, I wasn't quite sure if another survey had happened or not, and maybe not, but if so, I missed it. I didn't know that we were, if we were allowed to do that again. And so as a parent, this has been an overwhelming, stressful year taking care of my children at home, who are big kids. I shouldn't have said children. And then as a teacher, I'm overwhelmed. I know that we can't easily switch students back and forth. We're talking semester grades and graduation credits. It's not just an easy little switch. And we're talking about graduation. My children are seniors, and I teach primarily seniors all day at Bear Creek. The students in my classroom were scared. I spent a whole day answering questions. They were afraid about returning. They didn't have enough information. It was just all of a sudden it was out there, but no schedule, no how this is going to happen. It was just you're returning. And we really need to be careful to alleviate the anxiety and stress of our families and our students so they know what's happening. And so although grades were due, I was told to prepare to return to in-person school, but I wasn't given any guidelines. I wasn't even sure, am I supposed to be setting my classroom up in rows? How many feet do I space students out? And I'm being told I'll have an owl of some sort. So that was just frustrating. So I didn't move my classroom around or anything because I just didn't even know what to do. And then it was 6, then it was 4, now it's 3. So I'm really glad that I didn't move all those desks around. The number separation concerns me. Our classes are big. Some of my hybrid sections have 18 students, other teachers 19 and 20. So if we're doing any separation, we have much larger classes than elementary. Our DL classes, meaning distance learning for the community, so families who had signed up to stay home all year, and our in-person classes are not pure. We have kids mixed into them. One of my children is an on-campus but has a DL class, so that was a lot of confusion that was happening, that wasn't all cleared up yet. So what was happening with kids? Just another part about communication and taking time to prepare. My anxiety has increased during this meeting. When I hear people talking about, open up the next day as fast as possible, I start getting worried that I'm going to get a text message at 5 p.m. on a Friday night and everything's changing by Monday. And there I am on my weekend trying to figure it out again because I have already heard different schedules of what were happening. I'm a planner. I just kind of want to know, and then I can roll with the punches. So as I opened, please take the time to prepare and communicate with all stakeholders, parents, students, teachers. I love teaching. I've been teaching at Bear Creek since 1993. I love it. I want to go back teaching. So I don't want parents, when I speak of concerns, it doesn't mean I don't want to go back. Thank you.
Very nice. Thank you, Lana, for those comments. Mrs. Armstrong, who's next?
Next, we have Andrea Moshe.
Hi, Andrea. How are you tonight?
Hi, I'm good. Thank you. You can hear me?
Loud and clear.
All right, thank you. I had a whole speech prepared, but once my husband Tom Moshe went, I threw it away. I would be too embarrassed to read it after his. So instead, I'm just going to just kind of add on to a couple of things. I hope that you've all been on our website or our Facebook and taken a look at the Lodi Unified Parents for Open Schools. Everybody's invited to look at the comments and join if you'd like. We have over 1,000 members as of today, and there really hasn't been any teacher bashing or any of that. It's just been parents, 1,000 of us, heartbroken because our kids haven't been back in school. And we all know the reasons and what's going on with our children, how sad and depressed and, just frustrated because they're not in the classroom. So I don't want to go on about that. But what I do want to say is hybrid, what we've been talking about on our Facebook page is that hybrid puts a burden on parents. There's a couple of parents that have like 3 or 4 kids. So they would be dropping off and picking up kids like all day long. So hybrid's not going to work. Bring them back full time. Recess, they need it. They're not going to get COVID running around on the playground. Let them have recess. Lunch, that's just an excuse for, making it more complicated. They can eat outside. They can have snacks all day. They can eat when they get home. But we need these kids to go back this year, preferably on April 5th because we're all pretty confident that the judge will rule in favor of the San Diego group. And the other comment I do have, this tsunami of money that we have, it would be nice if you asked the parents how they would spend the money and what they would want to be done with the money. I've spent hundreds and hundreds of dollars, as have other parents, supplying wipes and crayons and supplies because we love our teachers and we've always wanted to help them out. And now we're getting millions of dollars in the name of helping our children's mental health, which we wouldn't have had these issues if they went back to school a long time ago. Some schools haven't even ever shut down and they're not having issues with kids getting COVID. They just aren't. The other thing that's really frustrating, the parents talk a lot about, is that we've been out of school for a year. So when you hear teachers saying that they're not prepared, it's really, all we're hearing is you've been out for a year. You've had a year to figure this out. So why are you not prepared? So I spent this whole meeting cursing and swearing and pounding my head against the wall because I can't believe I'm begging for my child to go back to school. And we have a different perspective. We go to Elkhorn. So we all know that, well, I'm going to say they're the best school, but I'm biased. I had 2 kids go there. But Pat has had her school and her teachers prepared for months. We've had over communication. They have a plan. They know what they're doing. They communicate to us. So if all schools aren't at that level, shame on them. They should be at that level. Why are they not ready to go back? Why is this teacher freaking out because she doesn't know what an outcome is? And we all know what it is on the parent group. So that's awful. And I feel bad for her because that's an awful place to be. So I tell my kids, I know kids are scared. I don't know why they're scared unless somebody is scaring them. They shouldn't be scared to go back to school because if they're scared of getting COVID, then they're not listening to the right news sources. They're not getting the facts. the kids are the less likely people to get COVID. So they shouldn't be scared about getting COVID. So I don't know why they have that impression. So what we've always taught my children is feel the fear and do it anyway. We're all nervous about it. The kids are worried, the teachers are worried, all of you are worried. Are we going to get sued if we don't go back? Are we going to get sued if we do go back? You're in a tough situation as well, but we need to just feel the fear and go back to school full time as soon as possible. Thank you for listening to me.
You're very welcome. Thank you, Andrea. Mrs. Armstrong, who's next?
Next, we have Angelina Terry.
Hi, Angelina. You're up.
President Freitas, I don't see Angelina on the list.
Okay. If we find Angelina later, we'll add her back onto the list. Thank you, Andrew. Mrs. Armstrong, what do you got for us?
Next, we have Michelle Reese.
Hi, Michelle. Welcome to our meeting.
President Freitas, Michelle is not on the list either.
Okay. What's up, Mrs. Armstrong?
Next is Haley Jackson.
Hi, Haley. Welcome to our meeting.
President Freitas, I do not see Haley on the list either.
Okay. And Mrs. Armstrong, does that conclude our public comments?
On my end, yes. There are 2 public comments that Dr. Washer has.
Very good. Dr. Washer.
Thank you, Mr. Freitas. Members of the board, I have 2 that were submitted, requests for me to read. You could not join us tonight. I will read them as they are written. The first one is from Jeremy Delatorre. Good evening, board. I have come to you multiple times to talk about school reopening. I have talked about the science MOU as well as given you a statement from my children. The harsh reality is they were given a glimmer of hope and you ripped that from them. The MOU that was originally formed was made in October 6 months ago when vaccines were not widely available. We have given staff the opportunity to be vaccinated of their choice, as well as have spent over $20 million in CARES Act money. Now, with more money being offered, you have decided to open in a limited capacity so that you can receive these funds. I ask you, what will you spend the next $20 million on? You have over $1 million in gloves, as well as have a requisition for $1.7 million to a temporary vendor site location labeled as budget. I emailed Mr. Khan and was told, usually people find my stock and trade to be mind-numbing boring. Guidelines continue to change, if not weekly, daily, in favor of full school reopening. So why are we not voting on this to open schools for all ages? These kids cannot engage with a screen. I'm sure you are aware that a student passed away a few weeks ago. This bright young woman's life was cut short. Now, I do not know her or her family personally, but my heart breaks for them. She was a daughter, friend, and the light of her family's world. I want help, but wonder if she were in school, if things were different, if she could have received some help, maybe a counselor or the listening ear of teachers. Her life is irreplaceable. I ask you to do what is in the best interest of all our children and quit this nonsense and open up immediately all grade levels. Next is, I have one more from Morgan Cedarholm. LUSD leadership. I'm urging you to open all schools now. Virtual learning is not a suitable alternative for students with learning disabilities, which makes it a form of disability discrimination. We also need to open playgrounds. If public playgrounds in our county are open, there's no reason why school playgrounds can't be open. If you think teachers have been working hard this year, just wait until they go back and have to teach students with behavior issues who haven't had evidence-based support services for over a year, on top of all these new classroom management regulations you've placed on them at the behest of Teachers Union. By the way, a certain member, Amy Ramsauer, didn't even know who Dr. Maggie Park was until 3 weeks ago, so that tells me she really doesn't care as much about public health as she pretends to. LUSD really got themselves into a mess this year. You should have opened SDC cohorts 5 days a week full-time back in September when the state authorized it. You should have requested a TK2 waiver, and you should have ordered a faster return in the fall when our county was in the red tier. That's 3 strikes. 3 times you failed to plan or choose the interests of the teachers union over the needs of students. Please fight for our students. Fight for their access to 5 full days of instruction. The science is on the side of full-time K-12 in-person instruction. Thank you.
It appears that we had another individual submit a request for public comment. Mark Kristen. And I think he received a confirmation at 6 o'clock. I believe he may be signed up for the action item. Is that correct, Ms. Armstrong?
Yes, that is correct. He signed up for the action item.
Sorry about that mix-up or that, but Mark Kristen is signed up for the action item, and we will be able to go on and have him speak here in just a minute. So, and that would conclude our report item as to the opening of schools. And moving forward, we now have the action item, and this action item will approve our safety plan so that we can begin with our K through 6 on March 29th and that approval. So is there any other comments from the board? Yes, Mr. Nava?
Yes, I just want to add on this safety thing. I understand that the elementary PE and music were on MOU back in November. I think that has expired. I don't see why we won't let these youngsters on their PE period and their music period. They're losing all those things that are essential to a student growing up, especially the fitness, and then the arts and music and all that is a correlation between their learning and what they do outside. So that's all I have on that. I'm for this plan. So that's it.
Thank you, Mr. Nava, and I join in those comments. Mr. Neely?
Thank you, Mr. Freitas. There's a couple of comments made about recess and about lunch. I would like to know what our schools are going to do about those items. And right now it's off the table. I understand. Let's get it back on. Our kids need to have recess. Eating at school. I've already talked to a couple of principals on that. They're talking about getting small groups together out away from places and classes. And I sincerely believe that they want the kids back full time. That includes lunch and recess, and we should be starting there immediately. So thank you, Mr. Freitas.
And thank you for those comments. I agree fully, Mr. Neely. Other comments from the board? Comments from the public. Ms. Armstrong?
Yes, we have 4. And first up is Michelle Orgon.
Hi, Michelle.
Hi, again, President Nava. Thank you. And I guess, you know, as I just received a message that some of the things did not take or were set on the pandemic plan. I hope that we look at all of the pieces that we have other documents that have been updated, that they get attached in the correct form, and that we update the pandemic plan. I do not, as it cites in the document with regards to site safety plans and maps and coded maps for school sites. And as Mr. Neely indicated, you know, and teachers and parents have talked about the want for their students to be at recess and at lunch. And we know the best way to have PE and music is live and in person. However, it was as we were negotiating that the safety mitigating factors could not be met. And that is why those things were put in place the way they were, that the district, there could not be cleaning, there could not be sanitizing in between. And I want to be very clear that, you know, the music and PE schedules that were set for hybrid, you know, were to be done in a way to reach all students. And we did not see and questioned how students would be doing this through Zoom in their classrooms between desks, but they could not mitigate the safety and cleaning and disinfecting in between. Just, I think, needs to be noted as we go back, the plans that were just worked on last week before the 2-week break, as we move towards any kind of full time, we definitely need to look at the safety and mitigation factors that the district said they were unable to do, and why we were doing recess and lunch and PE and music the way it was outlined. So if we can mitigate those factors, I think that would be awesome. And as is outlined in our safety plan and in the documents that have been provided by Cal OSHA, that there is a layering of effects of space for our classrooms, especially our classrooms that do not have any way to open out to fresh air. And that's mainly our newer buildings. Their windows don't open, so they can't get fresh air as suggested by the CDC. So please keep in mind that people have been working on the safety factors of this. And the reason why you have masks and layering with other things is to mitigate those factors. So if we are submitting this, I hope we are submitting that with those updates and with that understanding of what was discussed before and what the district said we could do. Now, I'm all for hiring more people to be more clean, just like more bus drivers, as I think that has been a need for some years. So please make sure that with this update that you're able to do all of those things to keep everyone safe. Thank you.
Very nice. Thank you, Michelle. Ms. Armstrong, who's next?
Next, we have Monica Sanchez.
Hi, Monica. Welcome to our meeting.
President Freitas, I don't see Monica on the list.
Okay, well, if she shows up later, Andrew, will you be sure to let us know? Thank you. Ms. Armstrong?
Next is Mark Kirsten.
Hi, Mark. Welcome to our meeting.
Hello, folks. Can you hear me now?
You bet.
Yes, thanks, board members and Dr. Washer. I'll try to be brief. I'm sorry, I got my wires crossed and have my comments in the action item as opposed to the previous one, but I really want to say thank you to all the board members who, as this process has gone along, I've been speaking with and have shared a lot of time and really gone out of their way to make sure that our group has answers when they're appropriate and when they're needed. So thank you for that, and also wanted to say that I really appreciate such to speak. The tide of this meeting today appears to really be turning in a hugely positive direction for those of us who would love to see our students go back. And I really appreciate, and I just want the board members and Dr. Washer to know that the parents are putting a lot of faith in the board, in the follow through here, that this will actually happen. And I can't really fault any of them for the skepticism that it won't. But at the same time, we'd like to put that faith in the board and have them follow through and come through with a great result for the kids here. And it sounds like that's the direction this is heading. And we just like to say we're really thankful for that, and thankful for people listening to and respecting the new data that has come out in it. And it has come out quite quickly, as has been described. So I know it's hard to keep up with. This process has not, and assumedly will not continue to be easy, but it doesn't have to be easy. It has to be worth it, and it is for our kids. And so I'll finish with that, and thank you for the time.
Very nice, Mark. Thank you very much. Ms. Armstrong, one more?
Yes, last is Ann Rogers.
Hi, Ann. Welcome to our meeting.
Hello, can you hear me?
You bet.
Okay. I think I also marked the wrong section to speak.
And no worries, I do it all the time, so.
Okay. Well, I'm a parent of a 8th grader, soon to be freshman, and I just wanted to have my voice heard. I think he's written a couple letters to the board himself. He really wants to be back at school, and that's something that he's very surprised about, because about a year ago, school, it kind of sounded fun to get 2 weeks off to flatten the curve. But I have to say it's been the longest 2 weeks of his life. And he was looking very, very forward to returning next Monday. So we are hopeful that you will all be moving in the direction to open the schools back up so that he can at least finish off school, his 8th grade year, getting to meet his teachers in person and classmates before he starts his freshman year. That's really all I wanted to say. I just worry about his mental well-being. I really think he needs to go back to school just like the rest of his friends. So it's not easy. I feel bad. I know that the teachers have the hybrid thing does not sound like it would be something that would work out very well. I don't know how a teacher would be able to teach distance learning as well as the classroom. So just speaking out loud, that's something that I wasn't planning on speaking about, but I would think that there should be separate classrooms for children that want to still learn from home, which I don't think it would be that many students, but maybe I don't have my pulse on all the children here in Lodi, but all the children I do know want to be in person. But anyway, that's all I have to say. Thank you for letting me speak and having this meeting.
Very nicely said, Ann. Thank you very much for speaking. Board, can I have a motion that we continue with current district direction for starting in-person instruction on March 29th, 2021?
Motion approved.
And
Second.
could we also, in that motion, move forward with necessary steps to implement as soon as possible, as permitted by public health and or legal decisions, grades 7 through 12 and adult education, for full in-person instruction for all students, and full in-person instruction for all students for all grades as soon as legally and publicly possible.
Motion.
Thank you,
Second.
Mr. Porter, for your motion. Thank you, Mr. Nava, for your second. We will go ahead and call for the vote. Mr. Knackstead?
Aye.
Mr. Heberly?
Happily, aye.
Mr. Neely?
Aye.
Mr. Nava?
Aye.
Vice President, I'm sorry, Clerk of the Board, Mr. Porter?
Aye.
And Vice President McFarland?
Aye.
And I join at aye. That motion carries 7-0. I would like to commend this board and staff for its courageous action in this moving forward and this change. This is no small feat, and I look forward to the day when all of our kids and our Lodi family can return to our campuses full time. This is very courageous conduct, and I'm very proud to be part of a board that's taken this type of conduct. So, very well
Mr.
done.
President, I move we adjourn.
Mr. Freitas, before we make that motion,
Yes.
I have a point. I think that next 30th is our next board meeting. I'd like to see that in person, open to the public, following the county guidelines and having all board members present. That can be.
That is not an agendized item, so that cannot be discussed, but I would tell you what, you have my full support, and I look forward to making that happen.
It's a point of order.
Very good. And with that, we are adjourned. Thank you.
All righty, Friday.